is a record label, independent record label in Eswatini. We've been at it for 10 years now. And then we've now co-founded the Antidote Culture Foundation, which is the one that has given birth to Vukubone, and here we are. Sizo and I will be talking about the digital music value chain, and basically try and give an overview of how value or how money flows in the digital music space, and also speak towards streaming, the streaming age. How did it come about? What are the opportunities? And try and put everything within a local context, because, you know, local, global isn't always the same. All right. How many artists in the room? Okay. How many producers in the room? All right. How many label managers in the room? Okay, 1. That's good enough. 2 with us. All right. So, yeah. That's the overview over there. That's where we'll kick it off. This is how we understand it to be. We stand to be corrected where you feel, no, this is wrong, but this is how we perceive it based on the past 10 years that we've worked in the industry. And we've tried to keep it very specific to digital or very specific to streaming. So you might see things that are missing there, like merchandise or whatever. For us, we don't consider that part of the digital music value chain, because, I mean, merchandise is physical. But can we all see where it all starts? Right at the beginning, with the artists, with the songwriters, with the composers. Those are the people, or that group of people are the ones that initiate the value in the chain. It starts with them. So a songwriter is basically a person who writes the lyrics to a song. The composer is the one who composes the musical aspect of the song. The artist is the one who records and performs the song. Sometimes the songwriter and the artist may be the same person. Sometimes the songwriter and the artist may be 2 different people. There are artists who are not that good at writing. Some are good, but maybe just don't have the time. And they have people who write for them. And composers are the people who create the melody. But from that first block, the next block that follows is the record label, right? In between, though, the first block and the second block, there is an important group of people that are there. Does anyone know who that might be? You can just shout it out if you think you know. Who? Humans. Producers and engineers, right? So a composer can be a producer, but it is not always the case. A producer is the person who just brings together everything. But sometimes you might find that I'm a good composer and I know how to produce. So to get from the first block to the record label block, there's producers, there's engineers who mix and master the product. And then I'll move it over to Sizo to talk about this. We can call it a second tier. The first tier is the tier of creators. Those are the people who create the product. The next tier is a tier for the people who invest in the development, the marketing, and the distribution of the product. So, yeah, Sizo, take it away.
Yeah. Sanbonani. As Mmeli mentioned, I'm Sizo Hlophe, co-founder of Antidote Music, Antidote Culture Foundation. As he's already mentioned, Gutsi, there is a connection between the artists and the record label, which is the producers. But then we ignored them here because sometimes they are almost invisible, which is something that you guys know of because of the business side of things. But then the core business of the music comes in this tier of publishers, record label, and distributors. And sometimes you would find, publishers, record labels, and distributors are one thing. Like you find one company that offers all those services, and then you find one company that is just a record label like us, and then one that is just a publisher, and one that is a distributor. And in all of them, there are major ones and there are boutique ones. And the boutique ones are the ones that are specific to style, like a record label that is specific to house music, like how we started. We're just doing house music, but now we've opened it up. And sometimes you would find, the boutique ones, they leverage networks a lot than the big ones. The big ones, the networks they have are at the far end, which is the DSPs and all of those. So the publisher, which is the most important component for composers and songwriters, they monetize your music for you. This is excluding the record label. But then they do take money from the record label, they do fetch money from CMOs, then they pay the songwriters and composers directly. So here, sometimes as an artist, you want to fit yourself like in the record label space, meaning you're an independent artist. So as an independent artist, you literally act as a record label yourself. So in that case, you communicate directly with your publisher, you communicate directly with your distributor. And sometimes you would find, even the distributors, as I've mentioned, some of them are boutique. So they are the ones like Song Bay. Is it Song Bay? The distributors, CD Baby, yeah. They're the CD Babies who just send stuff directly to DSPs, and they're not going to market your work. And then there are distributors who really want to push you, and most of the time they are very picky with the artists that they work with. So they do that because they serve a certain niche that they've already established connections with, like editorials, like film, like films, like ads, and all of that. So they get to pick and choose the artists that they work with, and then this could all be an ecosystem whereby it's one company that is also boutique, where they offer the publishing, they offer the record label, and they offer the distribution, and then the way they then send your music, like the way they would monetize your music would then be radio, live performance, and television. And all of them can connect to these directly, to this section of the industry, which is radio, live performances, and TV and film. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll take it to the next tier. Right? So we've spoken about the creators, we've spoken about the people who develop, market, and distribute, and now the last tier is the people who get it to the end consumer, or the end consumers themselves, which is, as Sizo mentioned, terrestrial radio. Terrestrial radio is FM, basically. It's traditional radio. And if you have a record label, more often than not, the record label is the one that is responsible for getting your song to the radio. But nowadays, in that line, though we did not put them, they can be PR and radio sampling companies, they can be management companies, they can be people in between that still do that, but we didn't put them in there because, it's a label service. So not unless you're like an independent artist, then it might be too much for you to be doing all of that, then you might need to find a PR or a radio sampling company or whatever the case. But they deliver the product to terrestrial radio. And then they deliver the product to TV and film. TV and film, we're talking about what we call sync deals or synchronization, where they take your music or an aspect of your music and it gets synchronized to a TV advert, it gets synchronized to a TV show, it gets synchronized onto a film. Music supervisors are mostly responsible for that in the film industry, but that's what we mean by that block. In some instances, as Sizo has mentioned, that tier of publishers, record labels, and distributors can't be the same person. So in some instances, if you are the record label or if you are the person who's doing the record label service for yourself, and you have a publisher, your publisher would be the one who delivers to TV and film instead of yourself, right? And then there's the distributor who sends your product to DSPs, and DSPs is digital service providers. It's anyone who makes your music available for consumption for compensation. Apple Music, Spotify, Deezer, YouTube Music, Facebook is a DSP because you actually get paid from your songs being used on Facebook, from IG stories, from all of that. TikTok as well. They are not traditionally a DSP, but you can think of them as that because they get your music to the end user. Your music is used actually by people on TikTok and you get paid.
Could I add something on that?
Sure.
Yeah. And there's a current trend that is happening now whereby Facebook, Twitter, actually Twitter now is working on monetizing your music when you put it on Twitter. And Facebook has already done that, and Facebook is one of the biggest payers for music. If your music is being streamed on a video anywhere on Facebook, they pay bigger than the other than most shops even, And then TikTok has that opportunity as well, whereby they are also trying to monetize, but then most of it, TikTok is big on discovery at the moment. So, yeah.
Yeah. So now that in that last year, because this is like a loop, right? The artists create value, it passes through all those people, it must come back to the artist, or else it doesn't make sense, right? One of the most important parts of this loop is something that we spoke about yesterday, the collective management organizations. And these are the organizations that administer, or rather that enforce your intellectual property rights. So I'll put it into context. You have performance rights organizations that make sure that you get paid for your performance rights. They are a type of CMO, right? You also have CMOs that look at the neighboring rights. The neighboring rights, if you remember from yesterday, are the related rights, which come from the master or the sound recording. And that usually goes back to the record labels, right? So it's a lot of rights, if I'm to be honest. There's also mechanical rights. Mechanical rights refer to, these are the rights that come from the right to reproduce your music. So back in the day, there would be a certain percentage that goes back to the owner of the mechanical rights for every CD that was reproduced, right? But nowadays, we don't have CDs. But streams also counts as a reproduction. Every person listens to a song, it counts as a reproduction. It's like you've made a new CD, right? So you find that DSPs have to pay mechanical rights to CMOs. Just to make an example, in South Africa, Capasso is the one responsible for collecting the mechanical rights. So all these rights are collected by the respective CMOs, the performance rights, the neighboring rights, the mechanical rights, and all of those have to flow back in two ways. They flow back through the publisher, and this usually has to be the rights that come from the composition, which is the lyrics, the musical composition, the other side. You remember from yesterday we distinguished that there's the sound recording and then there's the composition, which makes up a song. So the publisher gets all the rights that emanate from the composition, and the record label gets all the rights that emanate from the neighboring rights, or the master rather. But remember, we said, what Sizo said is, the record label, if there's no record label in your other record label, it means you are getting them directly. But traditionally, it would flow, it would cascade, because remember, you might have an agreement with the record label to say, oh, we're sharing the master 50-50, or they have 100% of the master. Usually, then it means you got an advance. So you can't be getting money back, right? So they get to keep all of the revenue that comes from the CMO, that comes from the master. The publisher, if you're an artist signed to a label, the publisher will receive those royalties that come from the composition, and it will get paid to you through your record label. Or if you are an independent songwriter and you just have an agreement with a publisher and you're not signed to any record label, those royalties come back to you directly, right? Likewise, in distribution, if you're not signed to any record label and you have a direct distribution agreement with a distributor or an aggregator, whatever revenue that comes from the DSP, which is the sales from all the stores, come to you directly. If you're signed to a record label, they come to you via your record label. I'm hoping all of this is making sense.
Can I add?
Sure.
Yeah. And sometimes you find that if you're an independent artist, you get a distro deal, a distribution deal. And if you go at the bottom on Apple Music, you're going to see your name. And then if you go to a record label's page, you're going to see the name of the record label. So in assumption is, even if you're an independent artist, the DSPs are going to treat you like a record label. Yeah.
So, can everybody see? Is it visible? Well, we'll share it if it's not visible enough. You might not see the actual figures on the graph, but yeah, I hope we'll work with this. So this comes from an organization called IFPI. If you're an artist, if you're a record label, if you're anyone who's in music and you want to know what's happening and you want to know the trends and what's what, IFPI is an organization that gathers a lot of data about the industry, and they take out annual reports. So this is from the IFPI Global Music Report of Global Recorded Music Industry Report, which details the revenue. And it's the 2022 edition. So the 2022, they report on 2021. So that's why the most updated stats there is the 2021. So yeah, I'd encourage you to go and check out IFPI, bookmark it, read it regularly, and basically this is showing the revenue, total revenue in the music industry from the year 1999 to the year 2021. Sizo, maybe, so maybe the red is for physical sales, right? Physicals is like tapes, vinyls, CDs. The navy blue is streams. That's the money that's coming from the streams. The turquoise, yeah, like light green, for those who might not know what turquoise is, is like digital downloads. So like MP3 downloads or iTunes. Before there was Apple Music, you used to actually download the actual song. So that's the turquoise there. And you have performance rights in pink, and then you have synchronization, which is what I was talking about, the sync deals, in mustard or yellow, depends how you see it. So maybe Sizo, you'll take us through that.
So if we look closely on this, you're going to see that the red is going down, which is like physical sales, CDs, vinyls, tapes. And as they were going down, there's a close relationship between physical sales and the MP3s, which is the downloads. So before the internet age, which is, if you look at the graph, this is before 2004, 4. Everything was physical, but then with the internet age, audio started becoming MP3, WAV, and all of that. So it started becoming downloadable. So there were now two revenue streams in terms of digital music sale, or music sales. So it was the physical and it was the MP3. And then as you move closer, as internet adoption was happening, it was killing the physical sales. And then as it was killing the physical sales, you start realizing that the MP3s were growing. So as the MP3s were growing, it got to a point whereby music was not viable at some point, which is, these were the years 2010 and 2000 and possibly 14. And piracy was the problem at the time. So physical was still available, and they were complaining that a lot of people now are downloading music for free on the internet. But then this was because there wasn't really a working model for the music industry at that time. And this is approximately the same time when we started Antidote Music, because we're making music as the Antidotes, and we're not seeing money. And we're like, what is happening here? So we're like, okay, maybe we can start Antidote Music. I mean, we were solving a problem of there was no music on the internet from Eswatini. So because of that download edge. And then we're like, okay, we want to follow the trail of where the money goes. And when we started Antidote Music, we started realizing that, you know, a lot of people are complaining about piracy, and we're complaining about piracy. Like each time we put out a song, we'd go on the internet to search for piracy sites and report them. So there was a reporting mechanism that was put in place by DCMA, yeah. And we were literally taking the links and sending them to that organization, and they would pull it down. And as that was happening, streaming was starting to become something that was viable to solve this problem. And as things continued, physical sales started really dumping. I mean, vinyl enthusiasts are kind of happy somehow because that's coming back to life, but it's not enough to say physical is still alive, you know. And then the MP3, which is a format, or the WAV, which is a format, started slowly dying because of streaming. As you can see with the graph, the turquoise? Yeah, with the turquoise starting to, you know, diminish as well. So more people now are starting to stream music, and more people are literally stopping buying physical records. I mean, they're still there, they're alive. Vinyls are back apparently, but it's still not enough, you know. For vinyls are almost niche in a way. So they're still very small. So streaming started becoming bigger and bigger, and it has opened up a world whereby anyone can get on the internet and put their music and go viral. So, yeah.
Yeah. So what Sizo's saying is, I mean, it's right there. You can see it. The navy blue is becoming more and more and more and more dominant. But here's an interesting thing, right? If you look, a lot of people say streaming is killing music. But let's look at that, right? 2021, That's the highest revenue that the music industry has had. I won't even say since 1999 because we don't know what happened even before. So it's actually, what's the figure? 26 billion US dollars. That's the value of the industry as a whole right now. And about 17 billion US dollars of that 26 billion is purely from streams. So streaming is driving serious growth in terms of music, recorded music revenue. But I do understand why people are complaining. The complaints come from a point of what streaming has done. It has reduced the unit value of the music. So before you could sell a song and you could get a lot of money. But now when you sell a song, you get little money. But what streaming is also doing, it's opening up markets to one another. Previously, you could be the biggest artist in Africa and just be the biggest artist in Africa and not get to other markets. Why? Because distribution. It was hard to distribute CDs. It was hard to get your music to Mexico. It's hard to get your music to Japan. But through the internet, it's literally at the click of a button. I mean, if I'm to be honest, our biggest markets from Antidote music is the UK, the US, Japan, Germany, and South Africa. Before, we could never get our music to Japan. We could never get our music to the US easily. But through the internet as a whole and through streaming mechanisms, global discovery has become easier. Now, in as much as it has become easier, there's a secondary problem that comes with that. The entry point, the barrier of entry rather, is non-existent. It's zero. Before, you needed to have a record deal in order to become an artist. Now you don't need a record deal. You can literally record a song today, sign a distro agreement tomorrow, have your song available for streaming next week. And they're in. And I think that's what is making it seem as if there's not enough money to go around. There's too many people. To put it into context, 60,000 songs are 60,000 new songs are uploaded on Spotify every single day. 60,000 new songs every single day. That's a lot of competition. So, I mean, if you understand economics, the unit value of the music is supposed to go down, right? But the overall value of the industry is going up. The question becomes, how do you position yourself to get the biggest chunk of that revenue? Is it? I would want to add on how you do that. There's mechanisms, there's strategies, social media. TikTok is a perfect example, right? I'll just use one case study, CK. Does anybody know CK from Nigeria? Love Nwatiti. Love Nwatiti blew up through TikTok. The song was released in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. But through, if I'm not mistaken, a Moroccan DJ who remixed it, and then some influencers in Morocco or North Africa started doing some TikTok videos. All of a sudden it caught fire. All of a sudden everyone on TikTok is using the song for their videos. And I mean, I stand to be corrected. If we're talking numbers-wise, it's the biggest song to come out of Africa. Love Nwatiti. It was topping the charts in Japan for like weeks. And if you know the markets, Japan is the third largest market, music market in the world. It's hard for African artists to get in those charts. He was topping the charts for weeks. And a lot of people, even from Nigeria, was like, who is this guy? You know, they didn't really know him. And even in the rest of Africa, they didn't really know him. But through TikTok, through that song, his life changed. Closer to home in South Africa, Master KG's Jerusalem is a perfect example. Through the internet, the song went viral through a dance challenge. Also one of the biggest songs to come out of Africa, making millions and millions. So the reality is the strategies are digital. TikTok, Twitter. I mean, to bring it even closer to home, for us, Dagangwane, Uncle Waffles, went from being an upcoming DJ in Eswatini to becoming a global sensation purely through Twitter, purely through Twitter, right? So there's value in understanding how social media works. There's value in implementing digital strategies and digital approaches. But also there's value in creating communities. I find that a lot of artists always just chase numbers, but it's always good to start off at a foundation. Have a community of people who can support you, because the art of going viral is dependent on a certain group of people who can initiate that. You won't just go viral. There's a whole science to that we might not have time to go into, but there's a whole science into how you go viral. I mean, Master KG, I saw the other day on Twitter, he has another song that's now going viral. I don't know how he does it. Maybe he should be sitting here telling us. But he has another song that on TikTok, like, I'm seeing so many Asian people doing videos, and I'm like, this guy is about to kill it again. So there is an approach to it. It's seldom spontaneous. You have to have a strategy towards it. You have to know how to market your music, how to make your music appealing. Also, the reality is you need to understand your audience. Sometimes as artists, what I've seen, especially locally, we have global aspirations, but we don't fully understand our audience. What does our audience like? What do Swazi people like in terms of music, right? I'll make an example. The reality is in South Africa, before Amapiano, the biggest genre in South Africa was gospel music, right? Now if you think about it, is it really a coincidence that Jerusalem is a hit? It's not. It's a gospel song. He knows what the people like. The people like to sing about God and express their faith, And Mage Petsile Masilela said it yesterday. He said, we really need to stop seeing each other as competitors and also start working together. And I'll tell you something for free. Gospel is the biggest music genre in Eswatini. Whether you like it or not, they is the biggest by far. But I've never seen a secular artist work with a gospel artist, Kangwan. I could be wrong. I don't see much of it happening. How are we accessing markets? Do we understand markets? Do we understand audiences? Or are we saying, I'm going to create what feels good to me and the people are going to like it? That's fine too. Like, that's creativity. But at the end of the day, this is a business. And one of the first things you need to understand before you launch a business or even a product, for those of you who may have studied business or business administration, the most critical point is the market analysis. What is the market saying? Do they want this product? Are they going to pay for it? So, I think you get the gist of it. Sizo, unless you want to add something.
For me, it's a question that comes up a lot is, okay, when people ask me, can you send me music from Swaziland? And then I send them music from Swaziland, and they're like, no, I want something that sounds Swazi. What is that? I think that's something that Mmeli touched on when he was speaking about gospel, which is we have a unique style of gospel music. But then what about the other styles of music that we're putting out? I don't know if we do have styles that are unique to Swaziland, and that's what actually puts some people in a position where they're like, okay, maybe I'll go where the original genre comes from. You know, like if we're doing Mapiano from Swaziland, it is great, but sometimes they'll be like, okay, maybe I'll book a big artist from South Africa, which now puts the Mapiano artist from Swaziland in a weird position. But then that also kind of opens up the artists into opportunities, because Mapiano is one of the biggest streamed genre in the world. So it has opened up opportunities for a lot of people. In Nigeria, they're making Mapiano. In the UK, they're making Mapiano. So anyone can make Mapiano. I was just making an example in the sense that when we step outside of this country, when we need to make our music for export, we need to kind of look and see where we fit ourselves as Swazis. What's the unique selling proposition that we bring in the market? So that when people say, I want this sound, and I can only find it in Swaziland, like how Mapiano, there's a debate of where it comes from, Pretoria. I mean, it goes as far as specific places like Gqom with Durban, you know. But in the UK, Gqom is from South Africa, it's not from Durban. But in South Africa, Gqom is from Durban, you know. And in Cape Town, they're like, oh, we have a different style of Gqom of our own, you know. So we need to find a way in which we can create music that we can place anywhere in the world. And they'll be like, that's probably from Swaziland, you know. And when people start copying it, they're like, nah, you're not doing it like the Swazi guys, you know. So we need to look into ways in which we evolve our sound, we look into ourselves. And I think the best thing is to just understand ourselves, as Mmeli has already said, that Jerusalem was not by chance, you know, like people listen to gospel. And in Swaziland, people do listen to gospel, you know. And I'm not saying go make gospel. I mean, I don't have anything against gospel. But I'm just saying make music that can resonate with the people. And it could be anything, as long as when you make it, you can have a community behind it, pushing it. And we can build communities too when we start our own things, and we just bump it when we just play all of that, you know. And we're like, okay, we're proud of this because it's from here, and we push it. So it's really up to us, and it's really how we develop our own communities around us through sound. So, yeah.
And just to add to what Sizo was saying, I want to try and find the right words to put it. But in any case, there's value in creating products that are exclusive to places. And in intellectual property, that's called a geographical indicator. To put it into context, you have champagne. Why is champagne champagne? It's found in a particular place in France. Why is cognac cognac? It's found in a particular place in France. They call those geographical indicators. And there's value in creating something that is exclusive to a place. If it's not from West Africa, it's not Afrobeats. That's what they say. And people from South Africa now are saying, if it's not from South Africa, it's not Amapiano. La militsi, yingwethu tsinela kangwane. No, here's the thing, right? It's not about that. It's about coining something, a phrase. I'll make an example. I think we used to have one, Lagangwan, but we let it die. There used to be Ngwane Hop. Who remembers Ngwane Hop? Diba Diba. Oh, it's a corner.
Siyayicela. Siyayicela.
Iguphi. Because this is happening all over. If in Tanzania, they have bongo flavor, right? In Kenya, they have, oh, it's running away from me, but I'll remember. In Nigeria, they have alt. Maumati, you'll say alt is Afrobeats. Because the lyrics, it almost sounds alike. Just like how even Amapiano, if we were to be truly, truly honest, it almost sounds like Kwaito. In fact, I'll say it, it's Kwaito reborn. But the beauty of it is that they realized, we need to create a geographical indicator for this thing. We need to give this thing a phrase. We need to find a place for this in our culture, street culture, Kasi culture. And then we need to sell that as a unique selling point, like what Sizo was saying. Because Amapiano is Amapiano because it represents the people from Ekasi. And you can't be from elsewhere in the world and want to replicate that. You can, but it's not Amapiano. Just like how you can try and make sparkling wine. Is champagne sparkling wine? I don't know. But you can try and make it. But so long as it's not from that town in France, it's not champagne. That's why Lamayektua, MCM, MCC, sorry, I do not indulge in the bubbles, so I don't know. But they could easily call it champagne because the reality is when you taste it, it really is just the same thing. But it's not, because that one comes from that place. So can we coin our own things? If Ngwane Hop is still alive, can you put some more effort into, because that was distinct, even the way they delivered, from cracks to Diba Diba. They had a unique style of delivery, and it resonated with a group of people a lot. Even I myself, I used to love hearing Emachita rap in Siswati and rap about things and places that I can resonate with. Another simple example of resonating with people. You see, there's many ways to connect with people. You can connect with people through experiences. You can connect with people through language. You can connect with people through places. Gakoza. Gakoza, for me, this is my own opinion. I could be wrong, but I think the beauty of it is that the guys are saying about an experience that we've all had. I've been in a kumbi, Nchage somewhere, and being bambelela. Yabo. And on top of that, everyone who's been to Manzini, mawuqhamuka from Babani, stage sekuqala kaManzini, Gakhoza. That resonates with people. That is what makes the song popular. And we need to try and start thinking about when we write songs. Are we writing the songs that are going to connect with our audience? And are we writing the songs that are going to be a unique selling point to the global audience? Because like Sizo said, the reality is, it's only 1 million people. You're not going to kill it on streams. But through streaming, through the internet, there's global discovery. We need to start creating music for global discovery. Build from a point of Eswatini, but think beyond Eswatini. I don't know if you want to add anything or should take some questions.
I mean, I can. I think the key component when you study Mapiano, Gqom, and all these genres, Kwaito, you realize that some of them came accidentally. Like an artist is in studio, they make something and they test it at tavern, And at the tavern, when people dance to it, then they make more of that. And then that comes a ripple effect, and it comes out of Ekasi, it goes to the city, because some of the people that come from the Kasi go outside and work in the city. Some of them are in radio stations, and they start playing this music in radio. And from that, a genre is born. So we need to look at how we can build that ripple in Eswatini. I know we don't have those close-knit communities like they do in South Africa. Like, we are sparsely located, like Mpuma Hlanze mina, and he's from Makolokolo. So, like, we don't have close-knit communities whereby I can play this at a tavern in my emakhaya la ngichamuka khona. Like, we don't have places, but we need to look into how we can cultivate those spaces, how we can put music in an audience in Eswatini. And I think as we all here, we aspire to grow this industry. So we need to find pockets of the country where it's a safe space for the sounds that we want to put out. So yeah.
Cool. I think I'm looking forward to some questions. I hope you have lots of questions. So, yeah. Do we have any questions, comments, opinions? If you want to challenge something we said, that's also fine. It's a safe space. Okay, I think we have also one or two there. Yeah.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
So, Mamin. Oh, cool. My question is basically about, I think Sizo spoke about social media platforms and how they are helping artists to monetize their craft, right? And I'm just thinking about YouTube, right? And how Swazi artists, well, Swazi creators on YouTube cannot monetize in that regard because we don't have ads, so like we're not seen as a place to monetize. So what advice would you give artists who want to use social media, but it just seems geographically like we're at a disadvantage? Like, what are we supposed to do to build the industry enough so that we are recognized by the world and worthy of that kind of investment? Yeah, because even like listening to Velamseni yesterday, she said her biggest song, she only made $800 from it. And we all know Velamseni to be like the star in our country. Yeah, so when we speak of digital media platforms, like, what is the tangible advice that you would give? Because we want to get into those platforms, but we also know that it might take years to actually make that money.
I think most of it is, I think we've covered part of that, where we talk about it. We need to look at it as a way of discovery. So if you want to be doing work at the highest possible level, you need to look into ways in which you can attract those eyes. You know, there's a lady that I've been watching locally, I forget her name. She goes around the country and eats at restaurants and goes into places. And that's relevant for anyone who's not here, who's looking into Swaziland. Because the thing is, we need to look at our country as a way in which people look into, and we need to communicate to those people. So as we try so hard to resonate with our people, we also need to look into the eyes that are looking inside Eswatini. And there are many facets of answers for the question that you have. Maybe Mmeli has another way.
Well, you know, I always say it's a reality. We are not making millions. But I always say start where you are and with what you have. If our starting point is making 800 emalangeni through streams, that's your starting point. Now, as to how we can move forward, I will support what Sizo is saying. For me, we need to see music as a vehicle for creating wealth. You may not get tons of money from streams, but if I were to ask Veli, would say, how many gigs do you think you got booked because of Bailey? By how much did your social media grow because of Bailey? Because here's the reality. We are moving into a place in Eswatini where corporates are starting to look for people who can help them get their product to market. And what's the key currency there? Followers. How many followers do you have? If your song is what's going to get you the followers that you need to sign 100,000 Emalangeni deal with a corporate for a campaign, then for me, it's still going back to that song. You make money in different ways. You might not make it from the sales of the song, but what happens one day when barely, I'll make an example, maybe Universal Studios wants to shoot a film in Eswatini and wants music from Eswatini and says, hey, give me barely. Dr. Lulu said yesterday, we need to start seeing intellectual property as an asset. And he went even as far as saying, in some parts of the world, they actually consider it as part of your balance sheet. That's how valuable it is. Right now, if you go and look at how much Michael Jackson's catalog is worth, it's crazy amounts of money. So let's not think in the now. Let's think of it as a seed. I'll plant this seed, then what I need to do is make sure I give the seed all the things it needs to succeed. The reality is the external factors. There are pests, there's climate, there's whatever. So it might not happen, but all you can do is ensure that the right conditions are there for it to get to fruition. That's all you can ever do. And these are the strategies that we're talking about, Nasiz. Put into place those strategies. Market the songs the way in which they can get to the audience, gahle. Or rather, not even gahle, but in a manner that resonates with them. Now we're going to get into so many things. Like Sizo said, there's many facets to it, because now there's the branding. Are we branding ourselves right? Are we communicating to audiences, gahle? That's another thing. It's so much to it. And also, that's why in that graph that we had, we started by showing you all the people that are involved, because it's so many people that need to be involved. You can do it yourself because the internet enables you, but it's going to be hard. You need people who are going to style you and brand you. You need people who are going to help manage the publishing side of your stuff. You need people who are going to, etc., etc. And just to add to the YouTube thing, there's different types of revenue that come from YouTube. You may not get ad revenue, but we get money from YouTube. Content ID. Content ID pays out. Well, that's if you're a musician. Might be different for other content creators. If you use our song, something that has actually happened, you put it in a mix, and that mix hits 1 million views. Those ads, those eyes that are seeing there, through Content ID, is going to trickle back to us. You know, so, yeah. I hope we answered you. Partially. Okay.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Yes, so I have a question here. I've recorded let's say I've recorded my music. So I wanted to go into the media platforms. Which steps do I need to take? How do I register, and how much does it cost? And the next question, what are the advantages or disadvantages of being an independent musician, and that of being in a record label?
Okay. Which one do you want to take? Okay, you can start with the first one. I'll take the advantages and disadvantages.
For you to get it on DSPs, which is like the shops, you mean? There are a couple of ways. We've already mentioned them when we were doing the value chain. So when you look for a distributor, and there's already free-to-use distributors, there's already distributors where you pay like a small amount, and they just put you out, like CD Baby and them. So that's one way to go with it. But then if you feel strongly about the work that you're doing, and you've identified a distributor that works with the style that you do, then you can send them a demo and say, hey, I make this, and I see it fit with your catalog, and I want to distribute my music with you. So that's another way to do it. So but then most of the time we always advise that you just need to be on the internet. So you can pay a small premium, which is like $10 for a song, and put it up on CD Baby or any other service provider that puts out music on all the platforms. And from there, you can create a following, and then you can change and say, maybe I need a boutique distributor where they're just going to focus on the style of music that I make. And that's the one question. What was the other one?
I'll take the other one about the advantages, and unless you wanna.
No.
Okay. Advantages of being an independent artist. Well, you have full creative control. Really, you have control. For me, that's the main advantage. You have 100%. But 100% of what? I mean, 100% of nothing is still nothing. And I'm not saying that independent artists have nothing. Don't get me wrong. Don't misquote me. The reality is, when you work with people, that's if you're signed, you need to compromise creative control. You need to compromise how much is going to be your share, your equity in whatever we're making. There always must be a compromise, because I mean, that's what a relationship is, right? It's a two-way thing. So for me, when you're signed to a record label, you have support. Also, this doesn't go for all record labels, hey? Don't get me wrong. There are good record labels, there are bad record labels. The onus is on you as an artist to make sure that you're signing to the record label that you feel like will best execute your vision. You don't just sign for the sake of signing. If you feel these are the ones that can execute the vision that you have for yourself, then sign. You will have support. You will have resources. You will have, a team. But you will need to forfeit some of the money. Angeke sithi masesakhe 1 million bese somfuna wonke. It's just not possible, because we need to pay the lawyer, we need to pay the publicist, we need to pay the studio, the producer, the whatever. In the end, from the 1 million, ngende kuthole 100,000. But the question is, if you are alone, were you going to make 100,000? Maybe you could. I don't know. I can't say definitively yes or no. Those are things that you need to assess as an artist. Am I committed to doing this myself? Do I feel like I can do it myself, or do I need help? And if I do need help, where is the right help? It's not about just signing to a record label. It's making sure that the record label will serve you in as much as your music will be serving them in terms of the revenue. So yeah, for me, the only advantage to being independent is just the control. You have full creative control, and you have full control of the ownership, and you have got full control of whatever revenue is made, whether it's 0, or whether it's 100,000, or whether it's 1 million.
But also, just to add on that, as an independent artist, you can also build yourself like a record label. But then the thing is, you need to be cognizant that you're going to be doing the business. So you're going to hire your manager, which is different from a record label, because they're already managing you. But then you're going to have to hire your manager and pay them, and you have to do the accounts for all of those people. You can also need to hire the accounts person. So at the end, you start looking like a record label, just that you are the boss, even though you're an independent artist, but you have a team. But then for you to build that team, you need to begin from the 0. And then you need to grow and build a community around you, around people that believe in what you're doing and want to put your music out there. So that's another, like, I would say, advantage in a way, where you're able to build a community around yourself. So it's really up to you, and it's really up to like the level of resources that you have. Some people, they just, I want to be an artist, and they build a team and they can pay everyone without selling a record. you know. And some, they need to sell some records and get people who believe in what they're doing. So it's really up to how resourceful you are and how much you have. So, yeah.
Also, we are not affiliated to CD Baby. I feel like we keep referencing CD Baby. We have never even worked with them. There are so many distros out there. You need to, again, look for the one that works for you. There's Ditto, there's DistroKid, there's, there's ones we work with, Paradise, there's many others, Orchard. Yours is to do the research. Some are free and take a percentage from sales. Some want you to pay them because maybe they're like, you might not make money, so just pay us first. You know. Next question, please.
It's not working. Oh, it is. Okay, my question is based on the genre things, like starting something that's like authentic to Eswatini or like music-wise. How best do you go about that? Especially, we live in a global village, and we know our country is very, very conservative. And if you try to do something that's different, they look at you funny. So how do you transverse along those lines where you are making this sound that is authentic to Eswatini, but also bearing in mind, they would say there's a whole global market that's out there, especially when you say that trending is not something that just happens. It's whole strategic and so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also don't get us wrong. Some trends are organic, but the reality is there was a science to it. But I'd want to question like the word authentic. I think maybe we should start there because the reality is there's nothing new under the sun. You need to innovate rather. And then we're saying authentic to Eswatini. What is authentically Eswatini? Maybe we should start there. The language, you know. The language is authentic to us, right? Our culture, even Pegmemetas Park, our culture is authentic to us. And let me tell you something. Our culture is super unique. That's not cliche. I was with someone, Eswatini, we were in the States, and we were at this function, and he decided, Guvunula, like fully. Half the people in that room kept walking up to him. Hey, what's this? Where are you from? Wow. By the end of the night, they were calling him Prince so-and-so. He's not a prince, by the way. They were like, wow. So, it's cause great for maybe Sizo pants, but to the rest of the world, no. And I'm not saying to a music video, Vunulu Pelele. Don't get me wrong, that's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is find pockets from the things that are authentically us, that also resonate with you, that you feel you can present to your audience. It can be the language, it can be the culture, it can be our heritage. I mean, our instruments, bomakoyane, nyamanje makoyane. I'd love to hear a hip-hop song with Makoyane infused there. I don't know how it would sound, but that is innovation, is it not? So now let's bakal and kulmangat. There are drums involved there. Can we not use that drum, sespaka, to compose our own? Do we always have to use like, you know, the drums that we find on these softwares? I won't say what they are, but can't we create our own sounds?
All right, sorry, Mary, just another one. So the thing is about Eswatini, there's just too many limitations, and one of them is that, like Ngwala, for example, they're just songs that you can't take out of Ngwala. They stay there. So
can I go on this?
Yeah.
as an artist, there are no limitations. Let's begin there. As much as the country has limitations, but you have free will, you have freedom of expression as yourself. So you need to, artists are daring people, they interrogate things and they speak on how they feel. They shouldn't be limits. You can censor yourself as an artist, but initially you shouldn't be censoring anything. So it's really, even when you talk about innovating the sound, it's really on the interrogation that you do as an artist on certain elements of yourself. And I wouldn't say culture is Sipata or all the other Umhlanga and all of that. Culture is how you lead your life. And from that, you can start building, utilizing the things around you to create. So the limitations could be on someone's culture, not your culture. But then you are in a country where you feel you have autonomy on your culture. So it's yours. It's not anyone else's culture. It's yours. So you need to start utilizing that. And if you see the traditional culture as yours, you bring it too and start utilizing it as well. So if you don't resonate with it, put it aside and focus on what is your culture. So, yeah.
And also just to add to what Sizo was saying, that's very right. Culture is on levels. There's a national culture, yes, there's traditional culture. But uma ngabe ungumuntu loke wahamba la kangwane, masingakhuluma liqiniso, kune culture yaseshiselweni. They have their own way of doing things. There's a Manzini culture. They have their own way of doing things. There's a Mbabane culture. There's an Ezulwini culture. Kune culture yasespigi. Wawufikile nje espigi, abantu basespigi bakubona akasiwa lalo. That's culture. The way they talk, ngisho neSwati. Swati sihlukile in all parts of Eswatini. Siyahluka. NeSwati sale kahoho. NeSwati sale shiselweni. Mawungaye inhlangano nyalo, ungamangala music laba ulalelako. Niyathi nje how big Mpaqanga in Maskandi is there. It's huge. It might seem like a non-existent thing. It's huge down there. So yes, there's a national culture, but there's also subsets of culture. Just like for me, how Amapiano represents the Kasi, the township culture. And that's why it resonated and grew from the township. And then because of movement of people, the people from the township, njengoba ashilo Sizo, labanye would work in the radio, labanye basebenza emadolobheni, and then they would be carriers of their culture. They would initiate a cultural exchange. Mawufika emsebenzini say, yawati amapiano. I said, no, angwat, la. That's cultural exchange. Like when you go anywhere and people don't know about where you come from, you become a cultural exchange agent. Yamati so and so. Oh no, I don't. Listen here. Oh, do you know? That's how culture works. So culture doesn't have to be national culture. What's the Mbabane culture? What do people in Mbabane talk about? How do they talk to start with? Is this, for example, I once lived in Manzini. The slang is different. It's totally different from here. So, yeah, I think that's that. Culture doesn't have to be national. Establish a starting point. Where are you going to start? Are you going to start from here? If you want to start from a national level, that's solely up to you. Like Sizo said, there are no limits as an artist, really. True artistry comes with no limits, but I must say this as a warning though. You need to be bold and you need to be ready to stand by what you do, because there will be pushback, especially if you start to interrogate things that are not part of the status quo. If you think about people who were in exile during apartheid, Miriam Makeba, Hugh Masekela, ask yourself why? Because they were saying things that were not comfortable, but they were ready to walk the whole journey. They were ready to live in exile. And I don't want this to become political, but I think you understand what I mean. So if you're going to interrogate certain things, you must be ready to go the whole 9 yards or 10 yards.
Ale manje teka mtineng mantinza bapata sengitame kuthi shombakanya kanje angilwe nemnakevu kunakulacetsa kusho, but I think info lesivamisa kuba nenkinga nayo njengeMaswati. Personally, I wouldn't like to say ukuthi eMaswati are conservative. Siyatsandza lokuti censorisha thine for whatever reason, uyabo. And as a result, bese asakhoni lokuchubeka sikhule, develop. So kunena nje lebantu labapho kuyisho ukuthi what's something lesiswati bese bathi sibhaca. Sibhaca sifika nyalo in the 20s after Mahacabeza esikolweni uSobhuza eEastern Cape. So when he came back, khanza kunemabhaca kunalabanye abantu kuthiwa amabhaca le badlala lokuthiwa sibhaca. So he came back with it and changed a few elements in that particular dance because bona theirs is a bit vibey. Bayibisa phasi pace bakangwane kwaphuma sibhaca. So they started an element of speaking certain things in it. That's why it's something about war, kuyadutshulwana. That's why nayiphela bese senyawa. Uyabona. So lokuthi thine asikabe sehlulekile lokuchubeka nale na that cultural offering. Yabona. For instance, speaking of sibhaca, kune instrument lekhona sibhaceni kuthiwa ingulube. I'm sure kude lo yadiko la if bakhona lo lokho ngiyamangala ukuthi kulamayo langaka la kangwane kude nje ngisho linye lelake laba nengoma lene ngulube kude le sound leyo la mhlabeni yethu, but we can't utilize it, uyabona. So kubuya ke ukuthi what do we have to offer? We've got something to offer the world that uyabona, like we said earlier, sine language yethu. Mneke ngibene enhlanhla ngenga experience nje lobunanzi bale Swati if you're not in Swaziland. Ngathi unemuthi noma niyakhulumela nje ukuthi awungike iphi phela le mali yami wena qhamuka abamvana sabacela inombolo sabafuna kwendani, uyabona, because bevale language. So imagine if you were to, you know, because ukhanze ukuthi khona labanye abafana ukhipha ingoma ipiano show but sotama kuzunda. The moment azunda, he has lost it because you sound silly, really, for lack of a better word. Kanzi kube ukhulumile ngale Siswati washo ukuthi mfana ngakuthatha ngikubeke. Lo selimbombo kuye, uyabona ama South Africans kimbe kavamisa ukuthi Siswati is the new French because they find it so sexy. So imagine ke if I love song uyibeka ngale Swati ungithathe uyasho ukuthi bhuti wami nguthanza. Uyabona, and then there you have it. Bantu sebakumele bafuna kuva ukuthi show yakho inini, but ke sengigocota kunenzaba le show ngithathe ngenzaba yama streams. If athi Velemseni she got $800 from Barely. Unfortunately I'm not a mathematical person, but batang sita bag Antidote. So I think that is more than several 100,000 streams. Leo, which is a lot of people by our standards. Because the last time I did some research, noma ngabe sengayidownloada ingoma yakho sonke soba 1.2 million, when ukugula 1.5 or something ngekhaya, uyabona. Because kuze kuthi utfole imali eningi, like Mmeli was saying, you need more streams, uyabo. So the point of the matter is thina asitakhele no music macha for export. Because si ilapho le secret vele thina sibancane kakhulu, asitikhanza nje ukuthi thina vele siyakhweshisa nje ngaso sonke isikhathi. Ngilapho nje mina bekunene ukuthi asingatibukeli phasi talent alikhona, but let's export our stuff.
Kusekela nje lokusho lisoloje. I'll ask a simple question. What's the biggest song to come out of Eswatini? I rest my case.
Yeah, and also to add, Nami, when you look at most of the songs that break out of Africa, and went global, those artists, they sound more like themselves. They don't sound like anything that is abroad. So we need to look at things in that way. Because if we're going to put out music in a certain market and we sound like them, they're just going to focus on the people that are in that market. So we need to find a way in which we mold ourselves to fit so that the demand for whatever we're doing can take us that side, you know, and start touring the world because we sound a bit more like ourselves. So, yeah.
I'd like to make, I think for me, it is a very important example of Swazi music. Kuna lomnye dzatsi lana bake babekisa ngaye so wathiphumelela bathi Mmeli Makeba. So a lot of people wouldn't really know this. So Mmeli Makeba wathi nakathi ufuna kwenda umusic wakhanzakala ukuthi unemadloti. So kwakosa ukuthi etela khaya atawutfasa. So nakafika lana kwathiwa nokuthi inkinga amadloti singanegotiate nawo sibakangwane. So sitakhuluma nawo bakhuluma namadloti athi amadloti no sithi inkinga Makeba siyabona ufuna kuhlabela. So sitawucela thine usi recordele umusic wethu and then bese wena so recorder lo wakho kuyachubeka yabo. And so she did record an album. So that album, Mmeli Makeba, which is that album that actually catapulted her to wherever. Actually, tingoma teswati letlange khathi kule ngoma. Sengizinza lo mhome yela babe ngabe kwende njani yaze yanginyunzela lemphekele hlabela ngeSwati clean. Bajabula bonke nangilele phasi mine ngagula ngalala phasi. Le secret ngilesi Swati. That was it. Sengilapho nje bekelene kusasekelene kuzunda sichubekene ngeSwati.
Amen.
Sibonga Lwati. Siyabonga kufundi.
Lusoloja stampi panel yakhe ngathi kunelwati lahleli nalo lapha. Can we take maybe 3 more questions but keep them brief, like 1 question?
Okay. My question is very different. We've been kind of focusing on the creative standpoint. I just want to ask, as label heads, what would you give an advice to new label heads on how best they can push the artist? Because as much as the creative point is important, it's how it's pushed that it also matters. So as label heads in the country, what would you advise us to highlight as the key components to being an established label head?
Build a community. I mean, if I'm to be truly honest, our rise or the way in which we grew in the industry came from a point of belonging to a community. And that's the community that supported us. Today we come from house music. And house music in the era where house music was dominating the South African music industry. That was like 2008 to 2013-ish. That's when we started. Through that community, even now, as we start to release other genres, Bomzwa, Bosanilo, those same people that knew us for house are still our support and are still the people that help us grow. So build a community, guys. Find people that resonate with the things you believe in. Find people that resonate with what you're trying to do and build from there. Those are the people who are going to help you grow as a label. That's your audience. You can't start something and have no audience and just think, oh, they'll come in as they hear me sing. Maybe, but most likely not. You need to establish a community, even within the artists that you're looking for. You need to have a clear profile that this is the type of artist that I'm looking for because they resonate with the values of the label. Yabo. And then secondly, know the business. It's not easy. Sizo and I have been doing this for actually more than 10 years. It's just that we started the label 10 years ago. We've been doing this for 12 years. And it's been 12 years of learning. We're able to say the things we say, speak the way we speak, because we've just been learning. And the reality is we are still learning. The music industry is one of the most complicated industries. There are so many rights, there are so many revenue streams, there are so many models, and there's very little formulas to say, do this and you will be a success. For all we know, you could come up with a new way of breaking the next artist. But you need to know the business. Like invest. I have read so many books. I have watched so many podcasts. I have watched so many documentaries. I've studied so many people. Like, you really need to invest. And this goes even beyond music. Anything that you want to pursue, the reality is you need to invest in the institutional knowledge. You can't just do it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, just to add on that, Mmeli mentioned, Gutsi, some of the people that we built ourselves around, they supported us. So what happens is, as you grow, 10 years later, some of these people are working in the institutions that enable the work that you are doing. So that becomes, your network in that case becomes your currency, because whenever they think about spaces where a certain product is needed, they can think of you, you know. And one of the things that I tell to any artist, which is a hack that I've used myself, is if you are going to want to work in a certain industry, look at the people that are in that industry, go into the spaces where they go. If you need to attend an event in Namibia because you wish your artist should perform there, you should go there without any booking. Just take your hard-earned money and just go there. And what happens there is normally magical. You stand next to a person who's gonna say, where you from? And you're gonna say, I'm from Eswatini. And they're like, oh, nice, why did you come all the way? And you're like, oh, I work with this music. And what they're going to do is they're gonna say, oh, I actually know one of the organizers, let me introduce you. And that's how it begins, you know. So most of it, you just need to invest, as he's already mentioned. You need to invest your time, you need to invest knowledge, you need to invest everything into it. And then eventually it starts working, so yeah.
You use in the chart you show that most of the money that is made now is made from streaming. And since you can listen, for example, on Spotify for free, which is going to get the artist paid, may you please share how much an artist can get from 1 million streams on Spotify at the present moment? If, for example, you can get your song on Spotify, because I think it's easy. If you get on their website, they do tell you which DSPs can you make. So can you use? So how much, if you know, do you know how much an artist can make from Spotify for 1 million streams?
I mean, I can answer you, but I'll say, just look it up on the internet. Not because, like, out of arrogance, but one, the numbers keep changing. So I might say something that's from 3 years ago, but on average you make what, 11 cents per stream, and this is cents in dollars. So you can multiply that by 1 million and then convert to emalangeni. So I wouldn't want to say as a matter of fact it's this. You can check on the internet, it's freely available. But it's not much. And also, there's a concept I want to speak on, just as you've said what you've said. There's what you call fan commerce. Fan commerce transcends streams. We really should stop thinking about how much you make from streams. So long as we keep asking those questions, we're going nowhere slowly. How much can you generate? How much commerce can you generate from your fans? Not from your streams. But in order to build a fan base, the streams are a gauge to say, oh, I'm now having 1 million streams. That's a gauge. But even more than the streams, on Spotify, you have people who follow you. So you can have 1 million streams, but only have 10 followers. What does that tell you? The people like you for just that song, but they don't like you for yourself as a brand. And that's not sustainable. If we're talking about sustainable growth, we need to understand fan commerce. We need to build fan bases and find ways to translate those fan bases into multiple revenue streams. The streaming can be one of them, but it's more than just streaming. And yeah, like I said, it's about 11 cents per stream, and it also differs from platform to platform. So I wouldn't want to lie and say an exact figure now. I'm sure you could all open your phones and say, how much do I make from 1 million streams on Spotify? And it will tell you.
Okay, Sanbonani. My name is Trent Nix, and my question is, I'm curious to know what you guys think the music industry is headed, especially because I'm looking at all this information you guys put up here, and we're still talking about record labels, yet we're not even making records anymore. So where is it going, you know? Like, where is the future of the music industry going? Because when I look at the TikToks and the Twitters and the Instagrams and everything, from what you guys are saying and from what I read when I do my own research, they pretty much do the work of a record label these days, you know? Because back then, record labels used to discover an artist, develop an artist, and then distribute their music, right? Mm-hmm. Right now, in this room, when it comes to the newest talent we know, chances are we discovered it online, on a social media platform, right?
Give an example.
I'll mention the one we all know in this room, and that's Waffles.
She's not signed to a record label.
That's my thing. I feel like social media platforms are doing the work of record labels. So I'm curious to know where you guys think it's going.
Who's developing her?
I'm sorry?
Who's developing her?
Oh, well, I can't speak for her business like that, but...
To your knowledge, who's developing her?
She has management.
That's the record label. See, the thing is, when we say record label, we're not talking about a traditional record label with a 360 deal. A record label is a structure that performs label services. What Sizo and I said at the beginning is that if you are not signed to a record label from that chart, I don't know if we can have maybe that chart on for reference purposes. If you're not signed to a record label, remove that box and put yourself as artist. All that means is that now you are the one performing all the services that a record label is supposed to perform. If you're an independent artist and you sign a distribution agreement to a distro, the other one, the first one, please. When you sign an agreement to a distro, you are the record label. Mabakbhala lapha ka Spotify or ka Apple Music. Babhala wena. You own the copyright. You're a record label. So when we say record label, don't get us wrong. We're not talking about a major record label. We're not talking about a traditional record label. We're talking about a structure that performs record label services. You are saying TikTok is a structure that performs record label services. Am I getting you correct? Yes, that's what I'm saying. I disagree. TikTok does not develop artists. TikTok is an artist discovery platform. So TikTok is doing the job of what an A&R department would do, and not even the whole department, the scouting part, because A&R is scouting, is the development, and then it has to end in the production when then the A&R teams works with the in-house production team to deliver a record. And we are making records. I heard you saying we're not making records. I just said 60,000 songs are uploaded on Spotify per day. That's a record. A song is, when they say a record, they mean a song. So not like a physical thing, if that's what you meant. So more songs are being made now than ever in history. So records are being made. But I do get what you're saying. Record labels are becoming obsolete as central entities, as entities that control everything, because they used to control the whole machine. They're becoming obsolete, but they're still there. Universal, Sony, and Warner run the music industry. You cannot scratch them out. And you know why? You need to understand how these things are put together. When we had that diagram, this film and TV, there's Warner Music and there's Warner. There's Sony Music and there's Sony. There's Universal Music and there's Universal. Ask yourself, why? There's a lot of revenue that comes from film and TV. And who has their vice grip on it? It's still very much them because they have the structures in place. So it's changing gradually, but we cannot say record labels are useless. I don't think so. Personally, I don't think so. But if we're projecting into the next 10, 20 years, we will get to a point whereby less and less control, and this is not even from a record label perspective, the world as a whole, if you look at the systems and the things that are happening, power is being decentralized. Information is being decentralized as a whole, not only in music. So yes, as we go into the future, it will become more and more decentralized than what it was before. So I agree with you there. But records are still being made, and records are still running, the record labels are still running the business, whether independent or major.
Hey, Sanbonan.
Sure.
Kamalaming Lawrence Wangamjuli. I have a question pertaining these collaborations you mentioned earlier on. So, whereby you even mentioned that gospel is the talk of the town. Yes, it is. But if I, as a hip-hop artist, were to collaborate with a gospel artist, I am a hard MC. Won't there be like a clash of expressions? Because I am a hard MC. And
What's a hard MC?
Like, I am a rapper.
Yes,
So-
but what does that mean? Are you saying there aren't any Christian rappers or gospel rappers?
Yeah, yes, I want to sell, so I can do everything, but I can't drift from the culture. Won't there be any clash of expressions there, and then this confuses the whole audience or the fans or the people?
Okay. If when you're saying your audience, you have to go to you rap about this, we are not saying then go rap about that. That's not what we're saying. Those are things that you should, and also don't get us wrong. Sizo and I were not saying go and collaborate with gospel artists. We were simply making an example from a market analysis perspective. If you analyze the market, what is the biggest genre in Eswatini? It's gospel. And my only question was, how come I don't see all of the people who saying they want to own the market collaborating with the people who own the market? It was just an analysis. I wasn't saying go do that. But to answer you, there's brand identity, and people love you for the brand that you are. Don't deviate. Because when your brand changes, the people who fell in love with the brand at the beginning, some of them fall out of love with it. So things that go against your brand identity, don't do them. I'm not saying go make a song and sing about God if you don't believe in God. Don't do that. If you're a hard MC, whatever that is, then collaborate with people that will accentuate that hard MC-ness.
I mean, it's also about your own creative direction, ne? So you're a rapper, you know your sound, and as you listen to anyone, you look into how can we fit that style and my style and come together and make a song. And some collaborations are not really monetarily like driven. They are driven by synergies, you know. So it's really about finding that synergy and making collaborations that make sense, you know. It's really about that.
Sanibonani. Igama lami ngiqipho intellectual ngakubulungu endlandlameni. I wanted to answer Mbule. I am a hard MC. Ngenza a genre. I've created a genre called Swangoma. Yabo. One of the reasons was I identify the need sound like high. But gulogo, it was also born from a selfish need yami to express myself ngendlela ngitati ngayo. Yabo. Kangangobe, I remember khathi si release we had the Swangoma manifesto, and solo jalapa he said something like, yeah man, uyati vele lo autotune uyasita ngoba vele awusilo nalophiwe lana ehlabeleni. Ngathi mina this is the reason ngoba nangine genre yami angengibhimbe kiyo ngeyami, yabo, ngimi lo wate ukuthi kumele istructureishwe kanjani, you know. In terms of ukuthi ke kufanele isound njani, it's very important vele ukuthi si integrate lama indigenous instruments. It's very important, but it's not indispensable to it. You understand? Ngezafse ukuthi umuntu yena na each and every person une story sakhe, kunema different rhythms lakakhule ngawo, and they have to be very loud about that. Ngilapho lokhona khona ukuthi ube so create a sound. Mina nje my method, I wouldn't say formula, is ukuthi Swangoma ngisakhe ngekuthi one, it's the lexicon. Imcoka kakhulu, not just using the language ukuthi Siswati, but I use colloquial terms emagama lawasebenziswa every day. Ngabekisa ngalo ethada wakatseni, yabo, or something lethi indzaba lenze kuseyawati, yabo. Inkhulumo yethu ya every day leyo. It's not just ukuthi ngisebenzise Siswati. Immediately nangisho something in a song, let's say yingulungulu wami, yabo, lesibabato leso, noma nangidawuthi hey labamfla abanengi kangaka angisabati lo leso sibabato leso, it's in everyday language exchange lakithi, hayi ukuthi nje ngimane ngasebenzisa lamagama ngoba Siswati, you understand. And so kusheshe kungene emvini lokho ngoba ukhuluma kona every day. So that's the first method lengisebenzisile. And then the second one, in terms of getting a buy-in, is community, like they were saying, Sizo and Mmeli. The community of artists lengisebenta nayo, ngiyaye ngicollaborate nabo, ngiyabekisa approach Sanilo, yabo. Ngithi Sanilo ngicela ku collaborator nawe kunayingoma naye yeswangoma, ngim invite into my sound. Uyayibona mfo leyo ngoba nakaphuma Sanilo sekathi ha uyati ubovana ingoma yami lengiyende nacipho, uyabo, so siyavakala leswangoma lapho, uyabona. And at the same time ngiya in some way ngiya impute nala kuye, uyabo, loluthando lweswangoma. Do you understand? So basically ngizama lokuthi i-genre vele uyakhona uyi-creator, much as kungeke vele kube sporadic lokuvuma kwayo, kutawendeka gradually, but ngibelievela ukuthi kulana vele kule community yakho you must be very deliberate about ukuthi ungubani, ufuna ukuthi expressa kanjani, and then start create ama genres. And also uyabona ubuka ukuthi in South Africa ngidabekisa ngoba vele bomzala bethu kunekwaito, kunepiano, sicathamia, mpatanga, yabo, piano. There's like so many genres. Akusho ukuthi le genre lo creator kumele ukuthi ibe embedded in no, it doesn't necessarily have to be embedded in there. Kumele innovate wena lokukhona nalokukhulekiko. It could be from influences at disco. It could be from Leo hip hop vele or Leo gospel. Yabo, as innovate. Create ema genres abe maneng futhi. Cause I mean ngeke sipheke developer ema genres alabanye.
Yeah, I want to add on something that you I want to add on something that you touched on that is very key in music, which is rhythm. I think we take for granted the kind of rhythm that our traditional songs have. Even the rhythm that the lolotelo, when you were growing up, the music that was being sang to us as kids. There's something about the rhythm that connects people. This is why most of South African genres are rhythm-based. They easily connect. Even when you listen to Gqom, it's rhythm-based. So most of South African genres are rhythm-based music because these people move in the same rhythm. They easily connect. And we need to look into our own rhythms, interrogate our own rhythms in the traditional songs, in the tingoma etinganekelwaneni. We study the rhythms and we can make them contemporary. We can go far with them, but then we need to understand the small things, like when the women are dancing in the country. That's unique. That's why most people come here and they fail to do that dance. And that's rhythm. And it's a rhythm that each and every one of us here knows. And that's a way in which we can communicate ourselves. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. We have come to the end of this panel.